Well, good morning, YouTube. This is Chuck, and it's Wednesday, March 26th, 2025, a little bit before noon, and I've got a project I'm starting today, so let me tell you a little bit about it. The wheel bearings on my trailer haven't been packed in a long time, and there's a service interval on those, and I've exceeded that, and I'm not going to tell you how far because I don't want to be embarrassed. But today I'm going to go ahead and pack the wheel bearings on my truck, or my trailer, I mean. And let me show you what all that's going to involve. But first of all, my trailer's sitting here, and it's a pretty flat spot where it sits. But you know, trailers, they don't have brakes on them when they're parked. And so I want to anchor it so it can't move anywhere, because I'm going to have to lift up the stabilizers, and I'm going to have to jack it up. I'm going to have to take the wheels off of it. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and hook it to the back of my old truck. I'm going to anchor it right to my trailer hitch there. As you can see, that front end's going to have to come up quite a bit in order to line up with that, but I understand that. And then I'm going to use a couple of bottle jacks, and I'm going to do the wheels, do one side, then do the other side. Now, I already had that one bottle jack, and this other one's brand new. And the reason why I got a brand new one is because my old one that I carry on my truck here is it's bad. And I've tried to repair it a couple of times, and it's probably old as I am, and it doesn't want to be repaired anymore. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go over here. I'm going to pull that tire cover off, of course. I'm going to get underneath there, and I'm jack both those wheels up. I'm going to do one side, then when I finish, I'll do the other side. But in the meantime, I'll have the trailer anchored to my old truck there, and that'll just keep the trailer from moving, because I'd hate to have it fall off the jack. So that's what the project is for today, and I'll bring you along as I go. And I'm using my brand new phone, so the camera works just a little different than my old one did, and we'll see how this one comes out. So let me spin this around here, and I'll be back as soon as I got something to show you. Okay, I've got the truck hooked up and anchored, and got the parking brake on, so that trailer can't go anywhere forward and back. I went ahead and took the weight off there. I don't even have to lift that all the way up because I'm not really going anywhere. This is just an anchor point so that it can't possibly fall off the jack. And back over here, I got the tire cover off. I got a breaker bar and a socket and an X-wrench here to go ahead and loosen those wheel lugs up. Then I got to crawl underneath there and put those jacks one under each axle and lift it back up. And I got my cardboard, so I'll try to keep myself out of the dirt as much as I can. So that's where I'm at. Looks kind of funny. I'll never tow this trailer with that old truck, but it always looks funny when it's hooked to it. So I'll be back in a little bit when I got more to show you. Well, there's something I didn't expect. You notice I jacked that front one up, and it went right up with no problem. And then I came back here to jack up the back axle, and look what the silly thing did. Look at that jack sunk into the ground. And look how it's tilting. Well, that's the reason why I wanted it anchored to the truck. But I thought that was kind of funny the way it sunk in the ground like that, till I realized that I can't get to the relief valve to put it back down again. I'm going to have to put a piece of wood underneath it to give it a base before I jack it up. And I didn't need that on that front one, but I'm sure going to need it on this one. That's kind of unusual. I still don't even have this tire off the ground yet. And that jack has sunk a good 1.5 inches or so into the ground. So I'm going to have to dig out around that so I can put the jack back down and then go get a piece of wood and put it underneath it to brace it out and give it some support. So just a little something I didn't anticipate and thought it was worth showing to you. I'll be back in a little bit. All right, now I got both axles jacked up. Now all I got to do is go out and take the rest of the lug nuts off, take the wheels off of it. That actually ended up having to dig quite a hole to get down there to release that jack so I could get it back out of there. But that's kind of interesting. I hadn't run into that here before. So once again, I'll be back here in a little bit. I got the wheels off, and just not too long ago I replaced this tire right there because it had some pretty abnormal tire wear. So that's a new tire. And now that I got this one off, I see it's got some pretty abnormal tire wear as well. And it's pretty well worn down here to the wear bars. So I probably should have replaced that at the same time, but I didn't. But I have to be looking at replacing that one real soon. Trailer tires aren't quite as critical as tires on your tow vehicle, but I don't like running with bad tires. And you can sure see the difference between that one and that one when it comes to the tread. They're the same kind of tire. Now my brakes, most RVs come with electric brakes. And 5 years ago I had mine converted over what they call performance brakes, which was it's an electric over hydraulic disc brake setup. And what that means is in order to pull those bearings off, in order to repack the bearings, I got to pull the calipers off. Now I already checked the pads, and the disc pads are pretty good. They'll probably live longer than I do. But anyway, that's where I'm at right this minute. I'm going to go inside and take a little break, I think, right now. And then I got to come back out and pull those calipers off so that I can pull the dust cap off and end up pulling those rotors off and see how good or bad the bearings are. I don't anticipate any issues, but of course that's why we're tearing it apart, because you never know. So I'll be back in a bit. Well, good morning. This is actually the next morning, and I'm on my way over to Walmart to pick up some supplies. And after that last segment, I ended up kind of getting focused on what I was doing, and the wheel bearing job is really greasy, and to film it you got to keep stopping and cleaning your hands and shooting a little bit with the camera, and of course I got a brand new phone. I didn't want to get my brand new phone all greasy, so I kind of went from tell you about it mode to get her done mode. But this morning I'm on my way over to Walmart to pick up some supplies so I can finish the other side. And I'll try to show you a little bit about that as I go along. So right now, one thing interesting about this new phone is the camera works a little bit differently. And it actually makes it a little more convenient to shoot like I'm shooting right now. Before when you shot it, the camera shooting toward you, it was a smaller picture, and I used to call that the small screen. And then when you shot away from you, you used the big screen, and you couldn't see what you were talking about when you were shooting when you're shooting yourself. You couldn't see what you were shooting. So sometimes I'd cut off my chin, sometimes I cut off the top of my head. But this camera's got this new phone's got a little different kind of camera in it, and it actually works a little better. And so I think I'm kind of like that. So anyway, I'm on my way over to pick up some supplies, and I'll be back with you again, and we'll do the second half of this project, and I'll try to show you a little bit more about it. Well, it's actually a couple days later from that last segment, and I ended up getting sidetracked on that one, and that would have been Thursday, and got sidetracked with both a meeting with a viewer who wanted to have coffee, and also my wife took sick, so I had to stay here and take care of her. Well, then yesterday, Friday, I worked at the museum in the afternoon. Of course, I didn't want to get greasy before I did that. So now it's Saturday, and we're back on the ground here, and we're getting ready to do this other side. And so I think I mentioned it already, but my old truck's kind of a handy thing, and what I'm using it for right now is an anchor to anchor the trailer, because trailers don't have parking brake on them. And when you jack it up and take the wheels off, like I did over there, there's really nothing to hold it in place. So basically, if you hook it to something and then set the parking brake, then that anchors the trailer so it can't move back and forth. It can't possibly fall off the jack. So this is a place to keep my tools. It gives me a place to work. I'm going to be repacking those other two wheel bearings there today. And I want to tell you a little sidebar. On the other side, I used the last two of these cotter pins that I had. So I went over going to get some more at Walmart, and I couldn't find them, and I asked one of the workers in the auto parts section if he knew where they were, and this is a 20-something guy, and he had no idea what a cotter pin even was. So I kind of gave up on that one right quick. I'm sure they got them there somewhere. I didn't find them. So I went over to AutoZone, and basically I wanted about a half a dozen of these to put in my collection. Well, they had a little assortment of 15 of them for $4.99. But they had this kit with 110 of them for $10.42. Well, go figure. There's 110 pieces on here. There's probably more cotter pins than I'll ever need in my entire life for about twice as much money in a little carrying case. So needless to say, that's what I ended up buying. It's just kind of interesting how you run into stuff like that. But my next, like I say, the next thing I got to do is pull these rotors off. Whoops, in order to do that, I'm going to get one of these days too. This thing's all broke to pieces. This little thing here, I just touched it just now, and it tried to come off some more. So it's going to fall off one of these days if I don't replace it. But basically, in order to get the rotor off, first thing you got to do is you got to take the brake caliper off, and there's a bolt here and a bolt at the bottom, and that's how you do that. And it's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. You got to lay down and scooch under there to do it. Once you do that, then you pull the dust cap off. Then you pull the cotter pin out, take the nut off, and then you can pull the whole brake rotor clear off of there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of packing, and I think my neighbor Mark is going to come over and be my cameraman for a little bit. And so that'll make it a little easier, because obviously this is a real greasy job and you can't do it and film it at the same time. So I'll be back in just a little bit. I actually finished that one. It's ready for the tire to go back on. This one here is my last one, and you can see I've already taken these bolts out here, and I got the calipers just laying up here on top of the spring. You don't want to leave the caliper hanging by the brake hose back there. That's bad for them. But up here on the trailer, you can just prop them up on the spring. Here's my brake pads. You can see there's plenty of pad left on there. These things are pretty substantial. This can probably live as long as I do. So the next thing we got to do is pull the dust cover off. And I'm going to try to figure out a way that I could hold on to this and do this and show you at the same time. Neighbor Mark was going to come over and be my cameraman. He took off and went somewhere, so I guess that's not going to happen. Let me see if I can figure out how to prop this here over here somehow. Oh, that may or may not work. If it doesn't work, I just won't show it to you. But you need to get in here with a screwdriver and tap on the back side of this little cap here. You don't want to pound on them too hard, because if you do, you bend them. There you go. Once you get it started, then you can just kind of work your way around it with a screwdriver. It's pretty simple. I hope that's getting that. Back it up a little bit more, maybe. That might help. You just kind of back the thing around. One of the first things you do, there you go, there are the caps off of it. We're going to use the wheel chock over here to store stuff. You can see that red grease in there. That's got quite a bit of grease in there. It's probably okay. But one of the things you want to do as soon as you take the caliper off, so there's no drag on it, is give it a spin. All right, there's no drag on that whatsoever, and also there's no no roughness or anything like that, which tells me that bearing's probably going to be okay. So I'm gonna pull the cotter pin off of here. You always use a new cotter pin anytime you do this, and you can use an old one, but it's much better if you got new ones, and they're cheap. And when the guy that put this on here, he used a big old long one and just bent it back up there. I wouldn't have done it quite that way if it had been me. I'd have been a little more careful, I think. I'm trying to keep my knee out of the way so you can see what's going on. And look at that. I think I'm just going to cut that. And I think I'm going to cut that one. We're going to replace it anyway, and then I can just pop this rest of this right on out of here. There's that. I put it down there. Next thing to do is take the nut off, and the way this trailer's made, there's not a whole lot of grab in there, so sometimes these can be a real booger to take off, but on this trailer it hasn't been. So we'll take that nut off of there. And we'll set it over here on the wheel chock as well. Okay, then we're going to pull that whole rotor right off. I'm going to keep my thumb right there so that bearing doesn't fall off on the ground. But this will come right off now, no issue. Here's a little interesting thing. If you look up here, you can see that. See all this stuff in here? That got on the wheel and got wrapped around there. On that other wheel, there was a little piece of thread in there that actually got in here on this, where this bearing surface rides, and actually damaged or the seal surface and actually damage that seal. And this one here is okay. The other two have been okay, but that one there showed little evidence of leakage. All right, well, I'm going to go put this over on the bench, and I'll come back and get you. Trying real hard not to get grease all over my new phone. Okay, there's what it looks like on the bench. Now, my hands are already dirty. I'm going to go ahead and lift this bearing up out of here and see how dark and dirty that grease is? Well, that's what we're going to get rid of. We're going to put clean grease in that. And so let me set that over right here. Wipe my finger off, and then I'm going to flip this over on the other side so we can take a look at that back side. Okay, there's that grease seal. If you notice, this in here shows little evidence that it's leaked too. Yeah. See that? Well, that's going to have to come out of there. And how we take it out is we use this little thing here called a seal puller. And that kind of it's going to kind of fit right in like that. And we'll just pull that thing out of there. But I'm going to have to pound on it with a hammer. I don't think I can do that and show it to you at the same time. Maybe I can set this over here out of the way. Let me see if I can do that. I can set that over there. Maybe you can watch what I'm doing. Let me go get the hammer. This is what the new seal looks like, by the way. They're like $4. Of course, you got 4 axles, or 4 wheels, so it takes 4 of them. Let me see if I can take this thing out of here on camera without too many bad words. You gotta kind of flip that up in there like that. And then you kind of got to give it a pull. The problem is it gets stuck in there pretty well. So what we do is we put some stress on it, and we kind of give it a little persuasion. There, it's coming. Oh. Decided to break there. Move it a little bit and try another section here. And there it is. Got it right out of there. I'll put it up. I'm going to set it over here with the other bad ones. The other old ones. All right, now the next thing we're going to do, I'll set this out of the way. We don't need this anymore. This is done. This is one of my old fire department work shirts that I cut up for rags. I cut up a lot of old clothes using for rags. And I was kind of laughing yesterday because if you look at this with this red grease on there on that white, when I was throwing that away, it reminded me of cleaning up clothes from a murder scene or something. And you see that on TV all the time. But it's just this grease. This grease is called red and tacky, and it's both. It's both red and tacky. So let me turn this a little bit over here. Now I'm going to pull that bearing out of there. Actually, what I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to put on a pair of gloves. I have my gloves in a glove holder right up above the camera where you can't see it. So I got latex gloves. I've gone through about 5 or 6 pair of these things so far on this job. Because you got to put them on, then you got to take them off, and then you got to put them on, then you got to take them off. So you put a whole box of them. My glove holder is actually magnetic, and it normally sticks on the side of my toolbox. But I brought it out here and I stuck it on the side of my truck just so it'd be handy. These old trucks like this, especially this one where you don't necessarily care if you scratch it up or get it dirty, these are the handiest darn things. Now we're going to pull this bearing out of here. You take a look at that. Now see, it's got some new grease in there, but it's also got a bunch of old grease in there. So we're going to try to clean as much of that old grease off of there as we can. And when we do that, then we can see that bearing and we can do a good visual inspection on that bearing just to make sure there's no pitting or it's not falling apart or not broke. A lot of times these things will actually break or they have a flat spot. But what we're going to do now is we're using this old work shirt. Kind of an unglorious end for a work shirt for a fire chief, but that's the way it is. I keep a lot of my old clothes I'm getting ready to throw away. I cut them up and use them for rags. And I got a whole garbage can full of rags in there. Okay, we got this pretty well cleaned up now. We'll take a look at it. And I don't see anything that alarms me at all. No flat spots, no gouging, no separation. Now this thing looks like it's going to be okay. So we're going to set that aside for just a minute. And then we're going to try to get as much of this old grease out of here as we can. And there's nothing fancy about doing that. It's just manual labor. If we were an RV shop and we did this all the time, look at that nasty stuff. If it's an RV shop and we did this all the time, we'd have fancy equipment to do this. But, you know, for a DIY guy like me, you know, we don't need all that. So, but no matter how you do it, it's just a nasty, dirty job. And you just kind of accept it the way it is, and you get weighed into it and get her done. And that's kind of what we're doing today. See how black that stuff is? We're going to put some of that pretty red stuff in there. You don't have to get every single bit of it out of there. You're not food grade or anything. I'm going to try to find a spot on this shirt that may be a little cleaner than the other spots. And then we'll stick that down in there. And try to wipe that a little bit. Find another clean spot here. Alright, that's probably good enough. What we're going to do now is we're going to get a handful of this nasty looking stuff here, and we're going to stick that down in there, and we're going to replace all that grease we just took out with fresh grease. We're going to pack it around there so it basically covers everything. Okay, now we're going to actually pack the bearing itself. There's a little trick to this. This is an old mechanic's way of doing it. You just grab a wad of this grease and you put it right in your palm of your hand. And then you take your bearing and you just start doing that. And you'll see where it pushes that grease right on through. See that old nasty grease is coming out? And so we just keep doing that until all the old nasty grease comes clear out of there. And we get pretty red grease. And then we know we got enough. See that nasty stuff coming out of there? Okay, we're going to wipe that off and do it a couple more times. And yeah, there we go. We got pretty red grease coming out of it now. So we're going to do that all the way around this bearing. Like I say, there's nothing scientific about it. It's just kind of the way you learn how to do it. They've been packing bearings like this for 100 years or more. Ever since they had bearings, I guess. Let me get a little more grease here. You buy that tub of grease, it'll last you for a long time. But you're sure going to get dirty over everything. That's just the way doing this stuff is. Just scooping it in like that, pulling it back through, putting more in. I think we're in pretty good shape now, so we're going to take a little bit of this and put a little bit more down in there. We're going to drop that bearing back in place. Make sure we got lots of grease all the way around that bearing. Just like that. And we're going to drop it in here. We're going to make sure it's got grease all the way around the edges of it. It's all packed in like that. Now we got a bunch of grease left on our hands, but some of that's black, and so we're not going to put it back in the container. What we're going to do is we're going to take this whole thing, we're going to try to clean our hands as much as possible. And once we clean some of that grease off where we can do it, then we're going to take our gloves off. We're done. We're done with this pair of gloves. Okay, so now we take our new seal and we set it in place. First of all, before we do that, we try to get a little bit of this grease here off of here. Get that back on our nasty looking rag here. And then we're going to take this part here and we're going to put a little bit of grease on this seal. Like that. Put that seal in place. Now there's a little trick to that, putting the seal in place, and that means you gotta get it started, but you can't get it too cutty-wampus. You want to get it as even as you can all the way around, and just tap it. And once you get it started, then it'll kind of go all the way around, and then go on down. Whoop! See there, it come loose. So we gotta start over. That's common, happens all the time. You don't want to use a round end hammer on that. You want to use one that's square, because these things will bend pretty easy. There, I think we got it. There, it hammered all the way down. Now we'll see if we can find a semi-clean spot on this rag. We'll go around here and get all the residual grease off the outside, but we're going to also go in here again with our finger, and we're going to try to pack right up against that seal all the way around, so there's no air spaces left in there. It's all full of grease. Okay, that's that side. Move this out of the way. Now we're going to flip this over. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. So first, I'm going to go get a different rag. Just hang on right, I'll be right back. Clean my hands a little bit. One more pair of gloves. And now we're going to try to get as much of this old grease out of here on this side as we can. Look at that nasty stuff. And that stuff's pretty ugly, and we're going to get rid of that. Yes, how bad that stuff looks. That might have been dark grease to start with. So I don't really know. Okay, now once more we'll try to find a spot that ain't quite as dirty as the rest of it. And see if I can stick that down in there and get a little bit more of that out of there. And there we go. Now, we'll get some of this fresh stuff and put some of that fresh stuff down in there. Kind of make sure everything in there is kind of coated. Okay, next thing we're going to do, we got this washer here. We're going to try to get the grease off of that. If you can see that line, see that line right around there? That's bad. That means that the bearing has been turning in there. That's what it looks like. So this bearing here, we'll clean this up a little bit and see, but it might not be good. We might have to, that might be But that might also be just a different washer than the rest of them, because the rest of them didn't look that way. So we'll get a bunch of that old grease off of this bearing. I'll use a different rag here, clean it up even a little bit more so I can look at it a little easier. It appears to be all right. Then maybe that washer just made a little different than the other one. And now we're going to do the same thing here again that we did before. We're going to get a little wad of that grease in my hand, and then we're going to just do that same process. We're going to dig through there, and we're going to try to push all that old dark grease out of there. See that stuff? And get rid of that. And fill this whole thing up full of new, fancy new red grease. Make it happy. As you can see, there's nothing real sophisticated about doing this. Just try to get that old grease to work its way on through and get bright new red grease in there. There we go on that one. I'll go over here a little bit and do this again. A little bit more and do this again. And I think one more time we should have it. All right, I think we got it. Now we're going to make sure we got a good coating of that, and then we're going to drop that back in place down here. Then we're going to reach down in behind it and pack grease in behind it. Get some of this off of my thumb here. Reach down and make sure the whole back side of that and the front side here has grease packed in it. Okay, we look like we're in pretty good shape here. Okay, now we're going to put our washer back in place. And we're going to get rid of some of this grease and get these gloves off. And I'm going to take you guys back over there and put you back over there. Maybe there. Washing from that angle. Hopefully that gets you. We'll come over and put this back in place. And then before we do that, we need to clean off this surface where this new seal rides. And this one looks pretty good. I told you the last one looked kind of bad. That one there looks pretty good. We got a little bit of fresh grease right here. We just want a real light coating of grease on that thing so that seal is not running dry. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to set this thing in place, and the way I'm going to do it is just pick it up I hold that bearing with my thumb so I don't pop off and fall on the ground. And I'll slide that thing on like that. And bring it all the way, there we go, all the way down. And there it's in place. Okay, now I have the big old nut and try to clean it up a little bit. With these bearings, you can't tighten them up too tight because the way the castellations are here. Then you put that thing in there. I'd like to have that bearing a little tighter than that. That's about the size it's going to go, because otherwise the cotter pin won't fit through. And we definitely want the cotter pin to go through. The cotter pin kind of slides in, and then you kind of do a tap or two here, and you grab it at the bottom. And pull it out a little bit. Pull the back side back in there, has to get pulled out too. There we go, then it'll go all the way down in. Just like that. So what we do, we bend it. And we bend the back side. Push it up there out of the way so the cap will fit. I'm going to have to go get my little hammer to do that. So hang on right a second there, I'll be right back. Okay, give this a spin to make sure that it's okay. Clean the excess grease out of our cap here. Set our cap up there. Just give it a little tap or two there. Once we get it started, then we go to this and we tap around the edges. I think that's about got it. Okay, I'm going to turn you off here for a little bit. Basically, all I got to do now is I got to put the caliper back on, but I got to clean that first, and I got to go get a new rag. You can make sure I get all the grease off of that before I put the caliper back on. And once I put the caliper back on, then the only thing left to do is put the wheels back on and we'll be done. So I'll bring you back here in a minute and show you what's going on, but right now I'm going to turn you off. Well, there it is. It's all back together. All I got to do is put the tire cover back on and go ahead and disconnect it from my truck. Then I got to go down and put all my tools away. So, project's finished. I got to restabilize the trailer, but that's no big deal. So we'll get that part done. This is probably a pretty good time to call a wrap on this one. And so let me tell you, as I always do, take care of each other and love each other and show gratitude for what you have. I have a lot of gratitude the fact that I can have a trailer and have an extra place to live and go travel and go see things, and I appreciate that. And I thank the Lord for it every night. So I think with that, I'll give you one more look at this big mess I got to clean up. And for right now, let me just tell you, peace out.